When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Making Friends with the Dark. User: 000LLP. Hosted May 27, 1999.
Homeownership was not something Miranda and I ever thought was in our future. We both came from families who rented, for whom even the strictest of financial discipline wasn't going to be enough to conjure a down payment. It's not that our parents weren't hardworking, just that we come from places where hard work isn't always enough. We'd been married for 8 years, renting a series of apartments from untrustworthy and often straight-up criminal landlords before we put our heads together under a leaking roof and ran the numbers. We weren't as poor as we've been raised to believe we'd always be, and if we cut back a little on the booze and the weed, we could swing putting 10% down on a fixer-upper. It took a couple months for us to find the right combination of availability, price, and location, but in the end, we put 15% down on a yellow brick 2-story at the corner of A Street and Burnbrae Avenue. A realtor had actively tried to dissuade us from the house, pushing other smaller and cheaper homes until finally we said if she didn't tell us what the problem was, we'd move on to someone else. At first, she was sheepish, trying to weasel out of the conversation by saying she felt the burden of repairs would be greater than we expected. When we pointed out that the home inspection report revealed nothing structurally unsound about the place and all the other issues were things well within my skill set to fix, she had nowhere left to retreat. She explained that the house had a long list of prior owners, all of whom relisted the house within 6 months of purchase. As far as she was concerned, it was easier to just avoid trying to sell it. Why had all the previous tenants moved on so quickly? A number of them had, it seemed, felt the house didn't like them, while others had a much more direct experience. Their belongings would move from one room to another, their pets would hiss or bark at thin air, and on rare occasions, a screaming voice with no obvious source would race toward them down darkened hallways. Miranda and I, both atheists, were more amused by this than anything and couldn't get our heads around the idea that this kind of bullshit was what had been holding up our entry into the property market. Her stories summarily dismissed, the realtor agreed to sell us the house. We moved in immediately. It took 6 months before the certainty of what you might call our materialist worldview was challenged. I was in the process of renovating what would be Miranda's sewing room, a toolbox laid out on my portable workbench, when I reached for my tape measure. If nothing else, I'm a creature of habit and a firm believer in measure twice, cut once. As such, my tape measure is always kept in the same spot. Yet, when I reached for it that day, not only was it not where it should be, I couldn't find it anywhere. Not on the ground, not underneath the sink, just gone. I looked for a good hour, grumbling and cursing beneath my breath, failing to turn up any sign the tape measure had ever existed, let alone where it was now. This process repeated with other tools, and I was beginning to wonder if I was, in fact, losing my mind. Especially galling was the fact it lost most of the tools necessary to repair the rat's nest of electrical wiring I'd found running through a wall and inexplicably under part of the dining room floor. For the time being, Miranda and I resolved to step over the worst of it until I could find or rebuy the needed gear. Not having pets meant there wasn't initially any opportunity for the second stage of the house's reputation to evince itself. We instead, for several weeks, existed in an annoying but harmless limbo of disappearing tools. Would you believe it was a raccoon that tipped us over into belief? The little critters are all over this neighborhood, getting in garbage cans and hissing dramatically at anyone who gets too close. What I came to recognize as the raccoon equivalent of the middle finger. On a warm spring afternoon, with the front door left open to help disperse paint fumes, one of those furry little bastards who apparently never got the memo that he was supposed to be nocturnal toddled in. Neither of us even realized he was there until we heard that same hissing we'd become accustomed to outside, except it was, coming from inside the house. Miranda and I carefully put down our brushes and followed the sound, which was now accompanied by fierce growling. There, in the hallway leading to the back porch, was our little burglar, a chubby brown fellow with streaks of white in his fur. He was rearing back on his hind legs, ferociously swinging his paws, and at something just above his eyeline. A chill ran up my spine, and though she said nothing, I felt Miranda's hand closing over mine. One shocked chirp later, and the raccoon reared back far enough to lose his balance, tumbling backward and landing in a fuzzy heap on the hardwood. Gathering himself up quickly in a bid to retain what dignity he had left, our visitor dashed back out the way he'd come, shooting between our legs in a brown blur, throwing one last hiss over his shoulder. That night in bed, Miranda couldn't hold back her concern anymore, and she asked if I thought the house was really haunted. Had she done the same even 6 months before, I'd have seriously questioned her sanity. So strong was my refutation of anything involving the so-called supernatural. Hadn't we experienced two of the strange things which had driven previous owners away anyways? And the third, a disembodied voice shrieking at you from the dark, was hardly the kind of thing you could live with. Despite my misgivings, I did my best to comfort Miranda, assuring her everything would work out just fine. Little did I know, that wish, and believe me, that's what it was about to come true. A constant throughout my life is my inability to dream, not in the abstract goal-setting sense, but in the actual, when I sleep, I see nothing until I wake up kind of way. People will tell you that not dreaming will make you insane, yet in 28 years, I hadn't had a single one, and still, more or less, had all my marbles. That night, for the first time ever, I dreamed. in it, I was laying in bed, Miranda curled up next to me, breathing softly. Through the door, I could see the faint glow of our hallway nightlight, keeping us safe from stubbing our toes while heading to the bathroom. In that quiet, I could distantly hear what sounded like a small voice straining. Another raccoon? It was the simplest explanation. With a sigh, I heaved myself up out of bed as carefully as possible so as not to wake my wife. Through the hallway and down the dimly lit stairs I went, my socked feet making very little sound. On the main floor, the straining was much louder, broken by vocalizations which couldn't have come from any animal because they were very clearly speech. Had an actual burglar gotten in somehow? Feeling naked without some method of self-defense, I nevertheless continued walking into the dining room, which was unmistakably the source of the noise. That's when I saw it. Sitting on the floor, his diminutive foot caught in a tangled snarl of wiring, was a tiny man, no more than 3 feet tall. In every way, his dimensions were roughly the same as my own, just shrunken down to half the size, with a sharp, lined face and pointed teeth. His clothes might have been the strangest part. They were bushy and green, as if grown into shape, and they glowed green. As annoyed as the small man was to be caught up in the cables, he became doubly so at seeing me standing there watching him. In a blink, he disappeared. The tangle of cables, however, were still there, clearly caught around something which was tugging at them lightly. Deep in the recesses of my brain, a series of synapses lit up, prompted by the Vanishing Act, all of them leading to a single realization. This was what had been causing all the house's mischief. We had a surprise roommate. Strangely, I wasn't angry about this. I knew what it was like to share someone else's space, how frustrating it could be to navigate their whims. I could no more want to evict this fellow than I could sell the house, and so those same synapses whipped up a compromise. Into the utility closet I went to find the breaker box, tracing a line down the panel until the dining room switch was under my finger. With a snap, I turned it to the off position, depriving the wiring there of electricity. Taking a box cutter from the shelf, I returned to where the rat's nest was still being disturbed by the small man's wriggling. Holding my hands up, I approached the area of pulled-up floorboards. Movement ceased, and I heard a string of words in a language I didn't recognize. They did not sound welcoming. Attempting to appear as non-threatening as possible, I mimed pulling a cable, then cutting it, while repeating the word help. The tiny man seemed to understand, as his rushed speech slowed to what would have been a conversational speed if I knew what he was saying. Gingerly, I pulled the blade from the back pocket where I'd stashed it, giving him time to take it in. Again, I mimed pulling a wire, followed by the knife moving in a clean, sawing motion. I knelt, amused at the discovery that our breathing was in sync. I smiled at the space where the man was hiding, at which he reappeared, looking guarded but less angry than before. Picked up the offending electrical wire and, as gently as I possibly could, used the knife to sever the loop around his ankle. The discarded wire tumbled to the ground, and the now freed little fellow let out a tiny cry of joy. I laid the knife flat on the ground before looking straight at him. Placing a hand on my chest, I said, "Stay," then pointed at him and said the same, gesturing around me at the house. "Friend," I added, moving my hand back and forth between us. His eyes widened, lips curling just a little in a smile. Then I woke up back in bed. The nature of that experience, particularly the end, forces me to believe what I experienced wasn't a physical event. In addition, the electricity downstairs was on when I finally ventured to look, and the cable I'd cut was intact. And yet, in the days that followed, every single one of my wayward tools were recovered in odd places around the house, never again to disappear. I never shared the experience with Miranda. How could I explain it in a way that doesn't sound mad, but a dream or no? I believe I did actually make a friend that night, and sometimes I feel him around us. Miranda has felt it too, interpreting it as the house accepting us. Whatever you want to call it, it feels good knowing we're not alone.
Subject: a favor for a favor. User: 18 Witter. Posted March 23, 1998.
The call came just as I was about to leave work. "Babe, my car just died in the parking lot." Brenda's voice trembled through the receiver, barely audible over the dull hum of the office around me. In the background, I heard Tommy fussing, his small voice cutting through the static, distressed but trying to be brave. I had to go inside to use the store phone. We're just standing here, it's pouring, the ice cream's melting in the trunk, and Her breath hitched. "I don't know what to do." I stood so fast, my chair nearly toppled. Hey, it's okay. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Just stay inside where it's dry." "I hate bothering you at work," she murmured, but I could hear the relief creeping into her voice. "It's not a bother. I've got you. I'm leaving now." As I stepped out into the parking lot, the storm had thickened. Sheets of rain turned the asphalt into a mirror, distorting headlights and street lamps into long, jagged streaks. The downpour drummed against my car's roof as I pulled onto the highway, the wipers fighting to clear my vision. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the road in stark flashes. My fingers clenched the wheel. Just get to them. Then, headlights. Too fast, too close. There wasn't time to react. The world lurched sideways. Tires screeched. My stomach dropped. Impact. The sound was a violent, deafening crack. Metal twisting, glass burning. My body flung forward, then yanked back as the seatbelt caught me like a noose. My skull slammed against something hard. Pain flared white hot. Then silence. I came back in pieces. A dull ache like distant thunder pulsed behind my ribs. The taste of copper clung to my tongue. My eyelashes were heavy, sticky. It took every bit of energy in my body to pry them open. Darkness pressed against the shattered windshield, my breath fogged against the spiderweb cracks. The air inside the car was thick, metallic, humid, wrong. Pain sharpened, a raw electric current shooting through my limbs. I tried to move, but something held me in place. My seatbelt. I lifted my trembling hands, wincing as a jagged sting traced across my palm. Blood. My fingers fumbled weakly at the buckle. It wouldn't budge. Panic stirred, sluggish and growing. My chest heaved as I sucked in a shaky breath, and then I saw him. There was a man in the passenger seat, unscathed, composed, unnaturally still. His suit was pressed and immaculate, a stark contrast to the wreckage around him. His hair was slicked back, neat, like he had stepped out of another era. He watched me with cold, assessing eyes that held no panic, no concern. He had been waiting. Quite the mess you've gotten yourself into, haven't you? His voice was smooth, rich, almost melodic, like a slow-moving river, and a tremor ran through me, deeper than the pain. My lips cracked open, but the words barely formed. "Who?" I coughed, tasting blood. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head, examining me with quiet curiosity. "You were in quite the hurry just now, rushing off to save your wife and son, weren't you? Noble." His mouth curled at the edges, not quite a smile. "But you won't make it there, not like this." The words hit like a punch. A surge of panic sent fresh pain through my ribs. "Call help," I gasped. "Oh, they're coming," he said, gesturing vaguely. "But by the time they pry you from this wreck, well," he sighed, like a teacher disappointed in a student. "Too late. And that would be a shame, wouldn't it, to miss so much?" Something in his voice shifted, like a hook sinking deeper. I didn't want to listen. I shouldn't listen. But then he spoke again. "Tommy's birthday is next month." The breath stilled in my chest. He's been talking about it for weeks. Balloons everywhere, a clown making him laugh so hard he falls over. Brenda, exhausted but smiling as she carries out the cake. My stomach twisted. The vision was too clear, too real, like he had plucked the memory straight from my wife's mind, from the moment she bought those stupid balloons and hid them in the closet. "A few years from now," the man continued, voice soft and hypnotic, "you'll be graduating. You'll stand on that stage searching for your face in the crowd, but you won't be there." I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the words away. "Then there's Lily." A sharp, involuntary breath. "She'll get married one day," he murmured. "She'll stand in her dress, her heart pounding, waiting for the doors to open, but someone else, some stranger, will walk her down the aisle." A sob wrenched from my throat. "Stop it," I begged. "Stop it." He leaned in, voice lowering to a whisper. "You could have it all back." The words wrapped around me, suffocating, intoxicating. You could hold them again, laugh with them, grow old with Brenda, see your grandchildren's faces. Tears burned down my temples. The pain in my ribs was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. "What do you want?" The man smiled now, fully, chillingly. "Not much," he said. "A favor." The air in the car shifted as if the space between us had collapsed. "One day, maybe years from now, maybe decades, I'll come to you and ask for something, and when I do," he spread his hands, "you won't refuse me." Every instinct screamed no. This seemed like a dream, like a bad mob movie I was making up with a concussed brain, but the images, the future I was losing, they drowned it all out. I couldn't let go. Yes, I gasped. I accept. I fucking accept. Please give me my family back. His smile widened, stretching too far, too unusual. Wonderful. He reached forward, his hand pressing lightly against my forehead, and darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up to a fluorescent light, the steady beep of a heart monitor, the sterile scent of antiseptic. I turned my head, pain wincing through my spine, and Brenda was there, gripping my hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Oh my God," she whispered, "you're awake." I wanted to believe what had happened in that car that day was a dream, a hallucination, but look, I knew better. Deep down, I knew. One day, that man will come back, and when he does, I won't be able to say no.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.